On today's show, Western Conference contenders or pretenders. Should the Dallas Mavericks be the favorites to make it out of the West this upcoming season, or was their last campaign just simply them overachieving? It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, but right now, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. FanDuel is the spot. You want to check it out. You want to get in on the action too. So not only can you capitalize on this NFL Sunday Ticket offer, but you can also take a look at all the different odds available to you over at FanDuel.com. We're talking about who the favorites are in the Western Conference, who the real contenders are in the Western Conference this upcoming season. You can take a look at the outright betting favorites to win the West this next season. OKC at plus 300, the Mavericks at plus 480 to make it out of the West again, right there with them. The Denver Nuggets also at plus 480, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves at plus 500 to be your Western Conference champion. So for all those odds and so much more, and to take advantage of this incredible offer, head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Mavs and Locked On NBA, Nick Angstadt. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Mavs. Here's we're doing Western Conference version of contenders or pretenders for this upcoming NBA season. So, Nick, let's start right there. Why should the Mavs, fresh off of a finals run, be considered legitimate contenders going into this next season?
Made the finals last year.
That's it. That's your.
I mean,
key statement?
that's the start with it. I mean, you could not have told me that the Mavericks would be contenders at the end of the season before last, when the Mavs missed the entire postseason. And now that they have, Nico Harrison's completely revamped the roster. It's Luka, Kyrie, and then pretty much everybody else around them has completely changed. And now this team has an actual team. They've got an actual roster. They've got people around that make sense around Luka and Kyrie. And Luka and Kyrie just went through the West, and it wasn't pretty easy. I mean, they had a couple of bumps here and there, but beat the Timberwolves in 5 games, then played the Clippers and beat them pretty handily. 1 in 6 games and a couple games in OKC too. So it's not like they haven't faced some of these teams before. The only one they really didn't face in that run was Denver, and Denver got worse this season. Now you can look at the Dallas Mavericks and say, all right, well, they had Derek Jones Jr. last season. They had Tim Hardaway for the scoring and all that. And now you bring in Klay Thompson. And if you give Klay Thompson bigger minutes, then what's he gonna do? How's his defense gonna be? And how is he gonna compare to how Derek Jones Jr. was last season? But they also had Najee Marshall, Quentin Grimes, Spencer Dinwiddie. To me, I think this team across the board got better. So a team that made the finals last season has faced a bunch of the teams that are going to be considered contenders in the West and got better. That's a contender to me.
Look, so first off, Dallas will undoubtedly be a better, I think, more talented team this upcoming season. That is a big sticking point, though. I'm glad you brought that up. The kind of the discussion around Klay Thompson, right? Obviously, he fits in beautifully on the offensive end, but this is not the Klay Thompson of a few years ago, right? He's lost a little bit of a step. He's not the same defender that he is. How big are those concerns defensively for this Mavericks team with him kind of slotting in when Derek Jones Jr. played such a pivotal role defensively for this Mavericks team last season?
Yeah, if you interact with Mavs fans online, there's going to be some in those places that say, why are we talking about this so much? It's not a problem. Don't believe them. It is a question. It is a question we have to ask. He's going to be 35 years old in February. He's had those 2 major injuries, and the Mavs are bringing in Klay to start next to Luka and Kyrie. I mean, you're not asking him to, okay, we don't need you to be the best defender on the court. We don't need you to, we'll have you defend the 3rd or 4th best guy on the other side. That is not the situation that Klay Thompson is in necessarily. He's playing next to Luka and Kyrie, who already fill those roles on defense. And so you do need Klay Thompson, if you're the Dallas Mavericks, to defend some of the best guards, some of the best wings. PJ Washington's going to get the majority of the best guys he's guarded, anywhere from SGA to Anthony Davis last season, going through the West. I mean, he had the gauntlet at times, and he's pretty versatile. You have Derek Lively back there to defend the rim. And the Mavs scheme is the reason why I think I feel pretty good about Klay Thompson fitting into this. The same reason that Luka and Kyrie can both be solid and almost good at times defensively in their role is that this scheme just depends on everybody communicating, everybody switching, rotating exactly when you need. And so for the most part, I mean, you don't usually end up guarding the player that you start guarding with, like in that position anyway. And so it's not like if Klay's guarding SGA or somebody, or Anthony Edwards, somebody like that, he's going to be on them the whole time. A lot of times they just bring up got whoever's guarding Luka, and then they screen him, and then all of a sudden Luka has to switch onto them anyway. And so it's almost like a scheme that helps lesser defenders become better than the sum of their parts, which has happened in both 2022 when the Mavericks made the Western Conference Finals and now in 2024 when they made the NBA Finals.
What does it feel like if there's one advantage that this Dallas team has that no other Western Conference contender has, what would it be?
If you're not watching on YouTube, I had a party in my camera. I sent it around everywhere. But it's Luka. I mean, he is the best or the second best player in the NBA. You can convince me of either one of those. And I think that him just being who he was, and even him being on the injury report all playoffs long, every single game he was on the injury report. He had so many different injuries and things. Him having a long off season to not play basketball. I mean, he played basketball back in when's the last time Luka played basketball? The Olympic qualifiers back, in July, and he just played that Goran Dragic tribute game. Played, quote unquote. I mean, it's been a month since he's played basketball, and that is kind of one of the first times we've seen Luka take that much time off in an offseason. It's going to be another month or so until he comes back again. So Luka having that time off, being the player that he is, he's going right into his prime right now, 25, 26 years old. And so I think that's the difference. It's him. He is the engine. He's an offensive engine unto himself. Him and Jokic, and I don't know if there's two other players that are like that you can just say, this player's on the court, now we have an offense.
At this point, when you start looking kind of up and down the Western Conference, obviously the Mavs won the West this past season. There were some that would argue that it was maybe a bit of an overachievement, right? Even you yourself at times last season covering this team, right? The highs and the lows of the Mavs last year. It was kind of maybe not a Cinderella run to the finals, but it was maybe an unexpected trip to the finals from where the team started at in the beginning of the season. As it stands right now, as we're recording this at the end of August, does it feel like the Mavs are the favorite to make it out of the West this year?
Oh, it definitely doesn't feel like they are. I mean, so the Mavs always is sort of one of those things where you're like, well, they should be good, but you got to look at when this team actually became this team. When they added PJ Washington, they added Daniel Gafford. That added two starters, essentially, for them that put everybody else in line on their team. Their whole rest of the role players fell back into line and fell into the pecking order of where they were supposed to be, and then they became their team. From February 7th on to the rest of the year, last 2 months of the season, the Mavs had the second best record in the NBA, 22-9. I mean, they were very good, had one of the best defenses in the NBA in that time. So you have to look at what the team became, not what the team was. You're looking at just the Mavs won 50 games last year. You're just judging them on the Grant Williams version of the Dallas Mavericks team and not the Dallas Mavericks team that they actually became. And so now, going into this season, this is the best core Luka has had to start a season by a mile, by a long shot. I mean, even the season they went to the Western Conference Finals, Jalen Brunson was not on his way to becoming the Jalen Brunson we know. He was getting benched against the Clippers in the first round of the playoffs the season before, and then comes in and we go, all right, what are we going to do with Jalen Brunson? Should we give him an extension? No, he didn't really prove anything in the playoffs, and then he becomes who Jalen Brunson was, and that was an amazing season. Even some of the years with Porzingis coming in, he was injured, and we had a drinking game on Locked On Mavs for a couple summers. Like, oh, first healthy offseason for KP, and then he got traded that season. This is the best team Luka has had coming into a season ever.
All right. Looking at the lay of the land in the Western Conference, how would you power rank these four teams, Nick? Nuggets, Mavs, Wolves, and Thunder. Go.
In a playoff context or in the regular season?
We'll say a playoff context.
In a playoff context, I'll go Mavs, Thunder, This is so weird. Nuggets, Timberwolves, even though the Timberwolves just beat them.
Oh man, I think you're gonna ruffle some feathers with that order right there.
That's fine.
You're
that's
good with that?
That's how I feel on August 25th, 2024, year of our Lord.
Oh man, do you want to back up that power ranking order with any evidence, anything else? Or you just want to stick with it and you're comfortable with it?
I'll back up anything. It's fine. I'm good with it.
All right. Well, Nick's going to back up those picks over at Locked On Mavs. He's got you covered for all your Luka, all your Kyrie, everything you need over there. Be sure to track him down. Nick, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me. Luka Doncic, Luka Doncic.